All right, man. I came across something the other day that absolutely blew my mind. I know where we are kind of in this world, but sometimes you see things that come across your desk that make you go, "Damn, I don't know anything." And that's where kind of
Understood.
this particular story comes into my brain. So, I know that you are pretty involved in the crypto world. We're going to get in a little bit into that today, but I saw this story the other day that they sold a house in South Carolina on OpenSea, which OpenSea is an NFT marketplace. That means someone used cryptocurrency to buy a house. Is that the world? Are we in that world now? Are the robots totally taken over? Is that what's going on here?
I think it's very interesting from a perspective of, I love talking about crypto like right now, because it's a down market right now. It's not like the, oh, everybody's doing well kind of market. And so it's a really good time to talk about it because you can actually focus on the fundamentals of things. And this is where crypto gets very interesting. Blockchain technology is great because it helps us to track things and be very open with how we track things. Now, some people don't like that. Some people really like that. But from a perspective of assigning ownership to things and proving ownership and proving sales, there is nothing that we have ever seen that is quite like the blockchain. And so from a perspective of real estate and, ticket buying to events, things like that, proving that you did purchase something, proving that you were there, proving that you own something. I think that's the natural progression of where we're going. So yes, we can get into the prospecting for things all over the place, but I think the number one thing that about cryptocurrency that gets me excited is exactly that. We saw it the other day with somebody buying a house by purchasing an NFT, and that NFT being a representation that they have actual ownership. And what's so great is from this point forward, we can track the ownership of that particular asset because it's tracked on the blockchain. And so very, very handy for a lot of the things that we do in real estate anyway. And so, I think that's, we're going to talk about lots of cool crypto stuff today, but I think that's a very interesting sort of lead in to this conversation. So I absolutely love it.
It's a very good lead in. And for those of you that are listening to this podcast right now going, holy cow, this is in a different language. I didn't understand a word of what he just said. Don't worry. You are not alone. I promise you. But we have got somebody here, and I'm talking about my buddy Ben, who knows a lot about this particular space, has done a lot of research and has actually spent some time and some money getting into the cryptocurrency space. So we're going to dig into, kind of the current happenings, what's really going on right now, and then kind of where you see the future of cryptocurrency going.
Absolutely. All that and more from someone who has both made and lost quite a bit of money in the crypto space. So let's dive in. Let's do it.
All right, man. So something I've always known about you, and I've seen you take this trait and use it to your advantage in your business is so cool. And you're like, what the hell is he about to bring up? No, it's all good things. So something you do a lot when it comes to new technology or new opportunities, marketing opportunities, whatever they may be that come into play. Dude, you are a relentless researcher. I've seen you do it. You are so good at this, and it's kind of inspired me in a lot of different ways to be able to do it. But something comes across your desk and you see potential in it, you put in the time, you put in the effort to make yourself an absolute authority on the subject. And over the past few years, I've seen you really latch on to a certain space. And I'm talking about cryptocurrency. So to the point, you've actually become, man, the go-to source for a lot of people. And I'm raising my hand because I am one of those people. You are the go-to source in the digital marketing space about cryptocurrency. And just from personal experience, literally 95% of what I know, which I'll tell you right now is not much, so I don't know what this says about you, but about cryptocurrency literally came from you. And that's why I bring this to you today, man, because I'm ready for an update. I think the world needs an update because there's been a little bit of a lull, am I right, in the whole cryptocurrency space. So let's just start at the beginning. So take me back. And do you remember the first time that you were kind of introduced to cryptocurrency, and what was that like, and what were your first impressions?
A long time ago when there was only one cryptocurrency, I started hearing rumblings about this thing. And I remember sitting in, a tiny room, in college and just hearing about, sort of some of the stuff that was being talked about as a precursor. not even like this was real cryptocurrency yet. This, but it was people talking about this digital money stuff and like, oh, our money should be digital. And that always made sense to me. That, everything went more to a digital system that was easier to keep track of rather than carrying around these extremely nasty dollar bills and things. Now, there's a lot of people that will be like, well, cash is great because of a lot of reasons. Well, yeah, I get on board with that. But I think the very interesting thing to me is from a perspective of media, like movies and TV and things, like I don't like having boxes of movies and physical things. I like having things, in a digital space. Yeah. And so, money being one of those things is great. And so, I get out of school 2007, 2008. If crypto had become a thing then, I wouldn't have had any money to put into it anyway. But, you sort of get into sort of the times when I start getting really into digital marketing is right around the time that cryptocurrency started to come together, which cryptocurrency was really the timing of it was a direct response as to what happened in 2008. Which is the fall of the housing market, just the whole world collapsing in on itself a little bit from a financial standpoint. And
I didn't know that's what brought it about. Okay. It makes sense.
Yeah. So there was a need for it before then, there was rumblings of it before then, but what really, I think, lit a fire underneath this needs to be something that we actually pay some attention to was that. And so, as we start seeing crypto, the early stages of Bitcoin come together. That was part of sort of the big manifesto of the people that were involved in that early project. It was really about something. We have to do something that's better than this. We have to do something with transparency. We have to do something that's truly limited, that can't be, inflated, because you had places all over the world, not just because of the housing crisis and, the financial markets crumbling because of that in 2008, but you had a lot of things that were going on in the world. If you really look around at that time, that entire economies were collapsed, there were bank runs on the banks, and things were happening in a way that the government of those nations had let people down. And so, what's a way that we can actually have a monetary system that makes sense? And so you get this cat that writes a white paper, just puts together a paper. And when I say you get this person that writes a white paper, and we'll link you guys to this white paper, by the way, it came out on Halloween, as a matter of fact, which I think is a fun little factoid. But the white paper comes out on a Halloween, and it sort of bounces around in this forum where people were talking, crypto type stuff, cryptography, things like that. And it starts to catch on. And, people are really into this project and want to be a part of it. And a few months later, the first block was mined for Bitcoin. And wow. Bitcoin becomes this thing that nobody gives two shits about, except for this small group of people that believed in this thing. But that was the genesis of it. It was, we had some things going on in the world, where this technology sort of intersected, and it, a fire was lit underneath the butts of a few people that could actually put this together. And so Bitcoin starts to sort of bounce around. And in the beginning, like I said, it was slow. This was just something that was going to go away, in a few months, in a few years, that, if you put your money into it, you were insane. And at the time, it was incredibly difficult to buy. There was nowhere to buy this stuff. If you wanted to buy it, at the time, it was just, you could participate, you could set up your computer to mine it. And that was how it worked. And, this is where people sort of get lost. They're like, well, what do you mean mine it? What do you mean all these things? And, that's neither here nor there. You can go look that stuff up. You can dig into it yourself. But the point is people saw a need for a system of money that was not controlled by a central body. That's it. There wasn't one top level group that controlled the distribution of it. There wasn't a top level group that controlled how it worked. It was literally something that obeyed rules, almost to a fault. But that was the beauty of it, is that there were rules, and the rules of the system was what dictated it, not somebody that was in charge because they were there early, or, they had family, or they had some business that controlled this. That's what the design originally of cryptocurrency was all about.
So it had nothing to do with any sort of like anti-government, anti-establishment.
Oh, it did.
And that's, I think a lot of times that's a little bit of the connotation, and sometimes that's, I think even to this day, people's ignorance. And when I say ignorance, I don't say it in a mean way. I mean, like, they just don't have the knowledge about it. They still latch onto that kind of stuff. And I think it's important for people like you, who are, a voice in a lot of different areas, to be supportive of something like this.
Well, I think what's interesting is, like, I'm not anti-government.
Right,
by any
not at
means.
all.
I think there's a lot of really good things about government and organization of societies. That's really what we're talking about.
Sure.
But you got to think, there was this idea of what cryptocurrency could be, and you did have people that were very much like, this is just a new system of money that's going to be better than the one we have. You had some people that were very anti-government that latched onto it.
Sure.
You had some people just in any new technology. You had some people that wanted to do some very nefarious things with this. And that's the thing. All of those parties helped to develop, this technology and how it was run and how it was put together. And that's a good thing. The idea is that the reason Bitcoin starts to take off and all these other cryptocurrencies that we have start to take off is because there's actual utility to them. And so where Bitcoin bounces around for a little while amongst this small group of people, there's no real utility other than novelty amongst these people.
Yeah.
But whereas it really starts to take off is it starts to take off because there's actual value that is being established amongst this group of people. Even though it's a small group, you start seeing the value of each of these things go up because they're actually being traded for other things that have value. And that's where you start to see, like, in every point in human history, marketplaces emerges, right?
Yep.
And so that's where you really start to see things come together, is not only do we have people that are sending Bitcoins to other people because they want things of value, like, a guy buys a pizza. That's one of the very early stories of Bitcoin, is somebody actually sent all this Bitcoin to somebody just to see if they could, and would somebody bring them a pizza if they gave them this much Bitcoin? And it happened. And so now you have, this seems like such a stupid thing, right? But what one of these things does, and a few of these things put together, is it starts to establish what one of these things is worth to people.
Gives it value.
Yeah. And so as we start having real world objects with real dollar prices attached to them being exchanged for these things, you start to establish a value. And over time, those things really start to shake up. Now, the interesting thing about Bitcoin, and not all cryptocurrencies follow this, is there is a finite amount of it. It actually, you can't discover more. Yes, there's at some point in the future, all of the Bitcoin will be out in the wild. It's not yet, but all of it will be out in the wild. And that is one of the core pieces of value and how we actually evaluate cryptocurrency, which we'll talk about later. I think my favorite part about talking about cryptocurrency right now, and I just got to say this, is that we're in a down market. Everybody and their brother likes to come out and talk about cryptocurrency because they got lucky. There's so many people that are considered experts because they got lucky with something, or they accidentally bet something. Where it's really fun to talk about this stuff is when things aren't going so great, quote unquote, because this is when you can actually get into the real utility of this. And as I said, the real utility of Bitcoin starts to emerge as people start to see that it's associated with real world value. And then we start to have places that put together entire exchanges for this whole thing. And so this is another fun story in the history of crypto. The first major exchange, which crashed and burned in spectacular fashion down the road, is a place called Mt. Gox. And a lot of people don't understand this, but this is the funniest thing in the world. Like, what does Mt. Gox stand for? Right? What does Mt. Gox actually stand for? So this is hilarious. Mt. Gox stands for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange.
Get out of here.
So for those of you that are super nerds that know what Magic the Gathering is, it's a card game. And so this was an online marketplace that it was a thing for Magic the Gathering. And how they facilitated some of these transactions and things that were going on is Bitcoin. And so they actually started loading up and having Bitcoin on this network a lot, and the technology to use Bitcoin because of this Magic the Gathering, original theme. And of course, this happens sometimes, is the original concept of the tool, which was for Magic the Gathering, goes away, and you're just like, oh, we are a Bitcoin storehouse. of people exchanging Bitcoin back and forth. And so the first major exchange happens because of some silly card game where people are establishing the value of what a Bitcoin is compared to this card game that they're talking about and they're exchanging things on. So, and I'm sure, listen, some of you are listening, you're thinking about the finer points because you are super nerds like me, but probably even more down the super nerds roads. There's so many finer points that I've glossed over that you can get into, but like that's where it starts to really happen. Is we start having these exchanges or this one exchange that is actually on a regular basis establishing the value of what we're doing. Now, from Mt. Gox, that's about the time that I really start to get interested. I bought my first Bitcoin with Mt. Gox. I lost some of my first Bitcoin because of the Mt. Gox crash and burn that happened. But right around that time is when you start to get some very interesting players in the world start to get involved. Which is probably another story that we could tell that's going to explain this whole thing as we get going. So, where are we at? What do you want to know?
Well, gosh, I want to know everything. Well, first of all, you talk like we're speaking specifically to the nerds, dude. I got to tell you, everyone that's listening right now is a big old nerd. We're proud of that. We're very proud of that. So I think and that's why this conversation is so cool. And we've obviously reached a point where you're extremely knowledgeable. I mean, I'm listening to you talk and going, okay, wow, I just learned a whole bunch of things just in a span of a few minutes. So how long did it take you to read and research and dig into crypto to get to a point where you felt like it was something that not only you could be knowledgeable on, but then you could even translate it maybe even into your business and begin to teach other people about it? Because I know that you've been doing that a little bit.
That's the thing. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies wasn't something that I ever really wanted to push people towards because it's extremely volatile, even to this day. Even having it's something that I've taught people in terms of awareness and how things work. Exactly. I don't like telling people go buy this. Yeah. That's not something with cryptocurrency, even with stocks though, the stock market, that's not something that I really enjoy doing.
I see these guys on TikTok telling people how to sports bet. Come on.
Yeah, come on, right?
Get out of here.
But what I did start to notice is there were more smart people starting to play along. And this is interesting. And so another interesting story, and I didn't know about this at the time because I didn't really know much about this, but there is a great movie called The Social Network that if you go watch The Social Network, this is about the rise of Facebook. And there's two villains in this movie, which are the Winklevoss twins or the Winklevi. And now at the time you watch this movie and both of these gentlemen are painted as quite the villains. I'm not so sure at this point that they were the actual villains in the movie. I think maybe the villain is the star of the movie. But that's not for me to decide. What's interesting is what actually happened after that movie. So as the credits are rolling and the Winklevoss or the Winklevi get paid off, they come out of this thing with a reported $66 million. So they don't walk away empty-handed. The courts, end with, basically getting paid off so that they'll go away. They're paid off. Now, something very interesting happened that the Winklevoss twins did that I think was very interesting. They decided that they wanted to take their stock options instead of money. So they take their money in Facebook stock. You want to talk about believing in an idea and believing in a concept? Even though they got burnt by this company, they took stock options, which when Facebook goes public, whoosh, lots of money. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. The Winklevoss twins take that money and they've got to do something with it. And they start looking to help other startups, right? So they're like, we're going to be angel investors, which I think is a very cool gig. So here's the problem. At this point, the Facebook movie had come out and nobody with an actual company, cool startup would do business with the Winklevoss twins because they didn't want to get on the bad side of Facebook because at this point, Facebook's acquiring companies for, tons and tons of money. And so nobody wants to be in that position. Yep. So they can't find anybody. On a chance encounter, the Winklevoss twins end up meeting some folks that start up a very interesting company that is pretty much built around making it easy for people to go in and buy Bitcoin. And so what ends up happening? What ends up happening is the Winklevoss twins, through this company, they get involved with this company. They start buying up tons and tons of Bitcoin at a very early stage so that they've got Bitcoin for their exchange. Not only do they buy it for the company, they buy it for themselves. They buy a lot of Bitcoin, and they form this company that is something that is very, very lucrative today. Even though crypto is down right now, it's a very, very lucrative company, and it's something that, like right now, you could literally get online and you could go purchase Bitcoin through their company. And the cool thing about the Winklevoss twins that they did is they went the route of regulation. They wanted to be regulated by Wall Street. They wanted to be in this mix of things. And so they form a company. I kid you not, it's called Gemini. It wasn't called Gemini in the beginning, but it's called Gemini now. And it's a very, very interesting company they've put together that you can go on and you can buy lots of stuff. And so end of the day, the Winklevoss twins ended up being okay. They're going to be okay in the grand scheme of things. But you want to talk about some early adopters that you can put your finger on and who they are. It's our two villains from the Facebook movie, which I think is interesting. And I listen, I don't tell these stories just for the fun of the story. I tell these stories because these stories sort of lead us to where we are now and where we're going. And I think that you have to have some of this foundational stuff to understand what's probably coming in the next little bit. And without people like the Winklevoss twins bringing in resources, putting their money where their mouth is, real dollars into something like this, you don't get the level of legitimacy that we're heading for. You have to have these early adopters say there is value to this. You have to have them bring in other people, and you have to have people like that taking bets on this stuff in a way that makes it real. And so I think that, when the end of all this is put together, you're going to find that those two individuals, they're going to be a lot more interesting than probably your Mark Zuckerbergs when it's all said and done. And that's not to say that Mark Zuckerberg doesn't understand the importance of this world too, and that he didn't build something great with Facebook. But I think that grand scheme of things, where we're going in the next 100 years versus where we went in the last 20 years and where we're going in the next 10 years, those two names are going to be at the top of the list because of what we're talking about today, which is cryptocurrency. Now, what I think people are probably listening to this today is they want to know what's next and where we're going. So we probably need to get into that soon. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I'd like to go. So just overall, in general, the crypto landscape, it's probably not that different than the rest of the world and the rest of the world's, economy and market at right now, because we're in a lull. So a lot of people probably feel a little bit apprehensive to, maybe start to dive into some of this crypto and stuff like that. So talk about, the current state of where we are, what you've seen kind of take place over the last little bit, but more importantly, if you could, and maybe you can even speak to some specific things that you're actually doing, but if you're standing in your spot looking into the future a little bit, what are you seeing?
So there's a reason that things are down right now, and it's because, and I'm not an economist, so please don't treat me like one.
Sure.
But we were in a world for 2 years, and I don't care who was the president, Democrat or Republican, it was going to be this way. Mm-hmm. During the pandemic, the whole world shuts down, but for some reason, our economy continues to go up. The stock market continues to go up. Crypto continues to go up. Some of that has to do with, when all the degenerate gamblers aren't working, they have to gamble. So they go to the stock market, they go to crypto, and that's fine. But right now we're suffering the effects of not only financial folly and decisions that were happening before the pandemic, but we're paying for the pandemic. This is the bill. Mm-hmm. And what comes in the next 6 months is us paying the bill for what happened during all that, which, listen, I don't think there's anything else we could have done. And while I probably wasn't the biggest fan of the last administration or even this administration, we survived it. That's the point, folks, is we made it through something where we probably, without drastic decisions couldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. And so right now we're paying that bill. And so crypto's taken a dip. The stock market has taken a dip. Everybody of us that invested in the stock market or crypto during that time, our investments are down. The mistake, I think, for me would be to go sell a bunch of these things that I bought during that time just because they started to go down and to try to pull out what I needed to then. The mistake would be to overreact and not see, some of the stuff that's happening. Now, I will say this. There are companies that I invested in the stock market during the pandemic that are never coming back. That money's gone. there are crypto projects that I invested in during that are never coming back. That money's gone. But there are projects that I invested in that are absolutely down right now because the whole market's down, that I truly believe are coming back because I believe the utility of what they're doing. I'm not just investing in, I hope money comes out of this on the other end. I'm investing in a way that I want to build the infrastructure that I believe these companies are building. That to me is what you actually put your money into. Now, that saying, that I make money and lose money on stupid stuff that I knew was temporary, 100%. Sure. 100% I did. But there are projects that I think are very, very interesting because the idea is, and this is where I think we wanted to really focus our efforts in the next few years, is banking is broken. Banking is broken by design. I have a lot of friends that work at banks. Sorry. Your business is broken. Most of you that work in banks that are my friends, it's not your fault. You didn't do anything. You were just doing your job. But banking is broken. And banking is broken because it is a central body that gets to decide certain things. And most of that is whether you get to start a business or not, or whether you get to buy a house or not. And we are in trouble financially. The generation that's coming up is in trouble financially because of decisions that were made by this group of people 20, 30, 40 years ago. So we have to do something different. And where I think crypto becomes very great is I love the fact that I can open up my phone right now, and if somebody needed a loan in Argentina, if somebody needed a loan in Greece, if somebody needed a loan in Europe, I can give that loan. Like I can literally give that loan. I can also take out a loan from somebody in anywhere in the world using crypto. And what that means is they can say, I'm going to give you this amount of money for, you take this amount of money, here it is. And all you have to do is every month that you don't pay me back, it's this much interest. The same way a bank would, except for I'm able to take that loan out through one person or multiple people that are going to give me that loan. And they're giving me that loan because they're going to make a profit over time. And I can pay that loan back over time that way. And what happens is no longer is there a central body that is like, putting this rule in place. We are talking about, I made an agreement on the blockchain that says I have to do this. I have to make sure that I do this or it's gone. Now some people are like, well, what if you don't pay it back? Well, don't they lose out? Here's the cool thing. I can only take out those loans if I put something of my own up as leverage. So when I have bought Bitcoin and I have Bitcoin sitting into account, I don't want to lose that Bitcoin, but I can put that Bitcoin up as collateral to get the loan. So I can take these assets that I have purchased and that I don't want to sell. I want them to be mine because I think their value is going to go up, but I can put them up as collateral. I can borrow a certain amount of money based on the collateral that I have sitting, just like the real world with the bank. I have to put my house up as collateral or my business up as collateral. I have to have collateral. And so what ends up happening is you start having this entire banking network that exists because of rules that are in place, not because one or two people decide or a particular bank got in trouble because they did something wrong. So now they can't give out as many loans to people who actually would qualify them. That's where things are interesting, is because you go into this system that is protected by rules. Are there faults in these rules? Are we improving these rules? Of course. But the key is now we are going to actually run a system of banking that can provide a lot of things for a lot of people in need, and it is completely independent of a central bank. And that is one extremely interesting part of this whole thing that we're doing. Now, there's lots of other interesting parts that we can talk about, but I think what we're talking about is, why is crypto not going anywhere? Because that's extremely attractive. It's, as a country collapses and their banking system goes away, your money is not safe in a bank. It's not. Tomorrow we could have bank runs because of something that happened that a central government decided. But if you've got your money in, a place that is, completely organized by rules, and it's not, dependent on how your country acts that month, we get into some very interesting things. Now, there's completely other risk on the other side of that, right? There's tons of other risk on the other side of that. But when you talk about why crypto's not going anywhere, it's because that is far too an attractive thing to too many people for that system. It's just great. It's gained the critical mass that it needs to sustain itself. And like I said, we're in a down market right now, but we've been in plenty of down markets in crypto at this point. Those of us that have been around a while, and we know that we know what's coming on the other side. And so there's lots of opportunity on that end. That said, I think the other side of crypto that's very, very interesting to me right now is the ability to kind of what we open the show with, which is to track certain things and track things in a way that you completely understand that I was a part of something or I do own something, and to prove ownership. And this is where we get into sort of the world of NFTs or non-fungible tokens. For those of you that aren't in on what non-fungible tokens is, we can actually talk about what an NFT is without talking about goofy art that's just online. A lot of people think an NFT is just buying a JPEG or something like that, but it's actually much bigger than that. And so if you want to talk about that, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of how I equated it myself. So that's why that article floored me so much when I saw someone literally purchased a home via NFT. And like, of course, there was some conversation about the legality of that and how you tie certain legality pieces to it and stuff. But man, I just thought that was so interesting, and I never really saw that, but it makes so much sense that a piece of digital art is the same as a piece of land or real estate or whatever it is. So I think that makes perfect sense. But yeah, digging into NFTs a little bit and kind of how you see that fitting in the landscape.
So you have to understand the difference between what a fungible token is versus a non-fungible token. And this is an important distinction. So let's say I'm holding a Bitcoin in my hand, if I could, right? Like I've got a Bitcoin and I've got another Bitcoin in my hand. Okay, so I got two Bitcoin. I could swap them, and who cares? It's a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin. That's a fungible token. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same value across the board. And so it doesn't really matter which Bitcoin that you hold. You just hold Bitcoin. It's like if I have a penny in hand, a penny in the other, they're both a penny, right? Like simple. Even though they're different, that in the real world, it's hard to explain.
That's funny.
Right?
That's exactly where my head went. I was like, oh, they must be of the same value. So that's the same thing I thought.
It's exactly that. So a non-fungible token is interesting because every non-fungible token can't be exchanged that way. So, I could have, think about this. Let's say we create 5 pieces of art that are the same piece of art, but they would be called an NFT. So it's the exact same picture, let's say. But the thing is one of them is number 1, one of them is number 2, one of them is number 3. You get the idea. Yeah. So here's what's so crazy. Number 1 is probably worth more than number 5 because it was the first, because it had a 1 attached to it.
Original.
Those of you that do trading cards, you'll understand that a low number in a pack was always more valuable. Mm-hmm. And this is stupid, but there is more value attached to things by humans because of interesting reasons. Now, that's the silly part of it. The interesting part about it is this. Let's say that you went to a concert 20 years ago and you wanted to prove to somebody that you were at that concert. Okay, well, you could pull out the ticket. If you had an autograph on the tickets, you could have somebody be like, oh yeah, like that's a real autograph that could be certified as something. But you could have bought that from somebody else. You could make up a whole story about that you were at that show. And you could have bought that from somebody else. And there's no way to really prove that you actually went. Now you could go pull financial records that you bought that ticket if you had that, but it's a complicated process.
Yeah.
So, one of the podcasts that we did a little bit ago is we talked about a festival that we went to called Bourbon and Beyond. And we really had a great time at this festival. You guys can go back and listen to that episode. It's in the archives. Yeah. And the interesting thing about that show is instead of just buying a ticket or a pass, let's say that we had actually purchased an NFT. Okay, cool. So that NFT could be delivered to us into our wallet on our phone. And, we could literally pull up that wallet and the picture that is attached to that NFT could be like a QR code that they just like with our regular tickets that they scan. But what happens is if we do the ticket that way, there is information on the blockchain that says we were actually there, meaning that scan of that ticket actually adds information to that NFT that says not only did they buy the ticket at this date, not only did they have ownership of the ticket, but we add information to that record that says they were actually here. They actually showed up. It was actually scanned on their wall in this wallet. So not only was it scanned, but it belonged to this wallet when it was scanned. And so now we can actually prove that we were in a physical location. That's extremely powerful. And if you don't see the ways that this gets interesting yet, that's okay. But the idea, Sue, is down the road, well, maybe we were one of the first people that went through the door. So there's some interesting value behind that. Maybe one of the cool bands that was there, Pearl Jam, decided that they were going to give a digital set of songs that nobody else in the world had to this core group of people. And also, that group of people was also entitled to a meet and greet down the road. Only given to those people. So all of a sudden, here's what's interesting. I could take that NFT that I have and I say, you know what? I can't make the meet and greet that day. The songs, I'm going to keep the songs. But I want someone else to have this. I'm going to make some money off of it. I could literally put it up for sale on something like OpenSea. Somebody could buy that from me. The pass is now passed to their wallet. Here's the cool part. I make money off that transaction, right? Because I sold it.
Sure.
But because Pearl Jam or Bourbon and Beyond, however they set it up, they also make a percentage of that transaction because I passed that to somebody else. And so they can actually set up that they're going to make a piece of that transaction and they can make money ongoing because they are a part of the value of that whole transaction.
Sure.
And so now the creators of these things can make sure that they are making money in perpetuity on things that they actually deliver value to. But also, we can actually track the transition of that particular item publicly on the blockchain. We can see how it got passed along the way. And so it's an interesting way to track records of things. It's an interesting way to keep a log of things. And let me just say, having a log of how many times something's been sold is valuable. Having a log of something that has never been sold before, that is just now coming into the market, is valuable. And this is where, as humans, the way we establish value to things, having a non-fungible token, something that is not like anything else out there, and you can prove that it's not like anything else out there, that's where it gets really interesting. And the really, really good brands are going to find ways to make these non-fungible tokens far more valuable than the ones that don't. And listen, as humans, we're collectors, but it's a lot cooler when collecting something doesn't necessarily take up space in your room. You don't have to necessarily manufacture the plastic or the paper to do it. We have a finite number of physical resources. When you're actually collecting things in this way that retain value, and you can sell, in a marketplace that's online, you don't have to travel to a marketplace. The efficiencies of that as human beings is still good. And honestly, a lot of people say, well, crypto's destroying our world. Yeah, we'd have some power problems right now. We have some energy problems that we have to solve. But the cool thing is you want to talk about keeping forest together in our world, producing oxygen. You want to talk about all the things that don't get destroyed if we do move into more of a system of exchange and tracking this way. We'll figure out the energy problem. It's going to be much, much harder to figure out the problem if we keep buying physical type things. And I think that's where you get into a very interesting sort of space with NFTs. It's not just digital art. It's tracking experiences. It's tracking things, but also rewarding people for holding those things. I think it'd be very cool if Bourbon and Beyond, if we had that NFT and we held it for 5 years, if maybe they let us in free to an event, if we were somebody that held on to an NFT. There's so many things as a brand because you can see everything that you've ever released as an NFT and what it's doing and how it's sitting out there. There's so many ways that you can reward people for doing certain things too, and it's all trackable. So the possibilities are pretty crazy. It's far more than my brain can comprehend right now. But the reason that crypto is not going anywhere, and I can say that I'm not going to point anybody to certain pieces of art or an NFT or a type of crypto, but the reason crypto is not going anywhere is because of the inherent utility that technology actually has. The blockchain technology is what makes it valuable. And yes, do I buy Bitcoin every week, every single week? And if I could give you one piece of advice, it's not to buy Bitcoin. That's not what I'm actually saying here. But what I'm saying is, if you want to buy cryptocurrency, don't buy a bunch of cryptocurrency at once. If you want to do that, that's you. But the best way to buy cryptocurrency or anything like that is set yourself up on a schedule and do what we call dollar cost averaging. And every single Saturday, I have something programmed to buy Bitcoin. And it's not a lot of Bitcoin. It's like $100 of Bitcoin every single week. Okay. And I don't care what the price is. I bought, a year ago, I was buying at a completely different price than I'm buying right now. But over time, if I actually believe in that asset, that something that it's going to go up, I will have bought at a different rate. I'm buying a lot cheaper now than I was buying a year ago.
Right.
And so if I'm buying it that way, it's a much smarter way to actually invest in something than just dumping a ton of money in because you think it's going to go up in the next year. And that's the thing. If you believe in a stock, if you believe in a cryptocurrency, I think a very smart way is do your research, find something that has utility, find something that it makes it special. Like I said, with Bitcoin, it's a finite resource. I have something called XRP that I buy into because of the financial things that they're doing there. I think are very interesting. Yeah. If you're going to buy into this stuff, though, I think a great way to do it is to do what we call dollar cost averaging. And that is to just make sure that you're buying a little bit at a time at the same rate. You're out of the decision-making process because we usually make dumb decisions when we get excited about things or we're in a certain mood. But every single week, if you can program an app, and like I said, I think it's the Coinbase app that I'm actually buying that Bitcoin with. Every single week, it does it for me. I don't have to put any input. I can always stop it if I need to. But I've been collecting consistently week in, week out, and it keeps stacking into an account. And right now, like I said, sucks because what I bought a year ago, the value has gone down. Yeah. But what I'm buying now, the value will go up. And so we have this dollar cost averaging that is going to put me in a position that's great if the asset that I believe in does eventually do what I think it's going to do. So hopefully we were all over the place with this, but hopefully you get a sense of the enormity of the technology, where the technology came from, and why there's so many of us out there that even though we don't understand all the aspects of it, and we understand that, we really get that we don't understand where it's going and we can't predict that, we're making a bet now for the next 30 years. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I don't want to cash out my Bitcoin. That's not what this is about for me. I want to pass my Bitcoin on to my kid. And I want that to be something that's the way that I look at this is I want to support the technology. I want to grow the technology because I think it's a better world that we're living in with that technology, but it's also an asset that can be passed down in a way that I think is very, very interesting. And even if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, there's ways that my family can pull those things out without a bank deciding or an insurance company deciding that they have access to that asset. And there's great power to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And based on everything you just talked about, I think there's a huge marketing element and a huge analytical element too that you just talked and kind of outlined there that I think is exciting. And so at the very end, let's wrap this thing up with a nice, pretty little bow. Someone comes to you, say it's me because I've done this before, by the way. Someone comes to you and talks about, hey man, I'm interested in crypto. I want to dip my toes in a little bit. Where do you suggest someone like that start? What kind of advice do you have? Just dipping your toes in to learn a little bit about the processes and what's going on out there. Where do you send them?
I think there's some great things, and I don't want to promote a specific company, so I'll give a couple here. But I was talking about Gemini earlier, that the Winklevoss twins are involved in, but also Coinbase. Not necessarily to go buy there, but what they have done and how they've had to position themselves in the market is they've had to put together some really good tutorials that are not sales pitches, but they're actually educational. And from a ground floor, you can start building sort of this glossary in your head of terms of what everything means, and you can slowly attack it. And that's the thing. I don't think it's wise to go invest in crypto tomorrow if you're just getting into this. What I think is wise is just say, hey, you know what? 30 days from right now, I'm going to go invest in some crypto and I'm going to put $100 in there. Or I'm going to put $1,000 in there, whatever your comfort level is. Yeah. And you go take 30 days to really look into that project and just read up on it. And if at the end of the day, there's something about that particular, cryptocurrency that you think is great, like you believe in what is behind it, what's the goal of it? What is the technology being developed for? Or you believe that it's actually rare, like Bitcoin is considered the gold because it's a rare thing, even though it's more rare than gold.
Right.
What is it about this thing that makes it valuable to you? And then go research it. Spend 30 days researching it if you're brand new, and then make the purchase after that or don't. And I think that anybody getting started, that's where it's at. This is a big idea. And if you've never explored it at all, it's really hard to wrap your mind around. But in 30 days, I promise you, just about anybody could get there. Hopefully this podcast got you started with some of the history of this stuff, and you're there. But jump out. There's great things like us on YouTube. There's far too many people that are like recommending things. I think that's insane. Go to a Coinbase, go to a Gemini, go to their tutorials and just watch. These things are designed for newbies to learn and not direct you down a path, but to actually educate you of what these things are. And we'll do our best to link you guys to those tutorial sections so you can just go learn on your own. And like I said, you can make an informed choice for yourself on that. So hopefully that's a good start for everybody. And hopefully Marshall and I did a decent job of giving you all kind of a crash course in some of this stuff, why crypto got to where it is now, where it's going, we think, and what are some of the implications. And hopefully it helps you to do something that's going to make your life better down the road.